listening to a live episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor. This is the third episode in, I think, less than 18 hours. Let's just say 18 hours. It is a podcast that brings you the very best guests in all of true crime. And if I'm being honest, these are my two favorite guests. Thank God it's Friday. I'm limping to the finish line. Carm tells me don't complain, but I'm complaining. I'm friggin' exhausted. We did the Dan Rashbaum interview, Fil and Scott. I don't know if you know this, but Phil was already saying, get me away from all the Adelson junk. We're going to get to it in a minute. But I had the lead defense attorney for Charlie Adelson, who was just convicted. And the same attorney is representing the matriarch. And we had a one-on-one interview yesterday. And I have to say, thank you to STS Nation. The vast majority of comments are very, very positive. To the haters, sit in my chair and try to do a better job. That's all I got to say. It ain't easy. I got two monitors. I got a criminal defense attorney trying to get through all aspects of the case. It ain't as easy as it looks. I'll leave it at that. And by the way, Phil, I read all the comments last night. And I know what? I'm going to pull this up, actually, from Fil Waters. Forget this. I want to read this to Fil Waters because I'd like Phil to comment on such a comment that I got. Obviously a troll, but all right, this is it. This was a comment after my show last night, and my mother was not co-hosting, and the name is Poo D. Like Poo D. She writes, cannot stand Carm. She is truly hurting her son's reputation. I am not a sub of STS Nation because of Carm in all caps. Keep it up, Pootie. That's all I got to say. And I'm going to stick Fil Waters right on you. Phil, anything to say about that?
Well, obviously they've got some issues that are coming out through their commentary about your mom. So then I mean, you know what? Those people are those types of people. All you can do is pray for them, love them, and hope they find a better version of themselves and what they're showing there, reflecting there.
Pootie, I love you. I'm giving you all the love. Phil's absolutely right. And I'm praying for you. Scott Duffey, please chime in.
I was going to go the opposite. I think he or she, Pootie, loves Carm and is just putting out the negative because the negative seems to draw more attention. So
100%.
Pootie's bringing in the love.
Fil Waters, you're basically a therapist, a psychologist of sorts. What is it that I read 1,000 comments and this is the one that sticks out? Why is it that people gravitate to the one comment that irks them?
Because it's personal. It's personal to you. It's not some, I disagree or, on just opinions. That's a personal attack. And of course you take it differently and you stick with it and you want to share it. So yeah, it's a personal attack on your mom. It didn't get much lower than that.
In middle school, high school, they used to say your mama wears combat boots in the bathtub and stuff like that. That's what this is like. It's irritating me. I defend my mother. By the way, very impromptu STS poll. Scott Duffey, who began in the seminary, was going to be a priest. He's now was an FBI agent, now the director of the Wilmington Institute of Criminal Justice. Should he write a book about his life? And then you've got Fil Waters, America's most respected detective. He's done it all. Undercover narcotics, homicides, everything, taught. Should he write a book? Let me know. Look at this. Dolly, by the way, I had a giant, this is what happened today. I went to school, drop off my middle and my youngest. The oldest just tested positive for influenza, the B strain, which is very rare, apparently. It's now taken over, but I never heard of influenza B. She just tested positive. So I went to school drop off without knowing this news. The minute I got back and laid down, I was so exhausted from last night. My wife says to me, "Oh, you didn't know that J-Mac, my son, has an event at school that starts at 9:10. I got home at 8:20. I went to bed at 3 because I was reading comments. So guess what I did? I went back to school for that event. That was my morning. So the reason I tell you that, I've had a liter of coffee and I don't drink coffee. And now I'm having a Coke. And there's a good chance I'm going to go into cardiac arrest, but I'm out of my mind. And at some point I will crash during the show. But look at this. Dolly B, member. Steno Queen, member. Thunder whoever, member. What is going on? I'll tell you why I think this is happening, because tonight it goes all the way down here. Austin Ivy, whatever, Ellen, CJ Chapman, J Mods, Bob B, Pat Brooks, Ryan Luciani, Stella Jeezy, and Gail Hawley. Tonight we're doing a watch party, Scott and Phil. We're going to be watching with members the new Dateline episode on the Adelsons, which Phil probably doesn't want to watch on a Friday night, but on and on it goes. Oh, there it is. There's the there it is. Jeannie Castellano, shout out to you and your husband. Members only, 9 p.m. Eastern. Look at Mish. Welcome new members. Anyway, we're doing a watch party. So join us for the watch party. Let me go down here and take a look at this poll. Who is saying if Phil or Scott should be writing a book? Even if there's no response to that. Look at this. Jay Antonio says, Scott Duffey, I'm an alumni from St. Michael's, St. John's. My great-grandmother, alumni of Loretto Academy. Do write a book. Are these Philly places?
I would have to ask Antonio B to clarify a little bit. I mean, I've heard of all, but I think every city probably has a Loretto, a St. Mike's, and a St. John's.
Lydia Anderson, yes. Maybe. Hey, Mona, what did I miss? Why is Joel upset? Someone's talking smack about my mother. That's why I draw the line, Mona. That's why I draw the line. Joel, do you ever sleep? Not well. Oh, here's another thing, Fil Waters. So the house next to us, I live in a very quiet neighborhood. Look at this, Mia Bito. This is a great idea. COE, I hope you're listening. Joel, do get a hot stone massage. The house next to us, every house, quiet neighborhood, the house next to us is a rental. Whoever is renting it thought it would be a good idea on a Thursday night in a total kid community to have basically a rave party at the pool, because it's warm here, out back at 2:30 in the morning. 100 cars lined up on my street. I had to call the cops. I had no choice. By the way, I told the cops I wanted to remain anonymous. I didn't want to get beat up, but I'm telling everyone here. But cops showed up. The noise quieted down. But you know what? I'm becoming my father. Fil Waters, how would you have handled a giant noise complaint directly next door to your home at 2:30 in the morning? What would you do?
Just the same way you did.
You would
get the officials out there and let them do what they're supposed to do, and let them resolve it. I'm not going to go over there and, I say I work these cases where neighbors go and confront neighbors, and stuff goes on for days and weeks, sometimes years, and then all of a sudden manifests itself into somebody killing somebody. So there's nothing to be gained by going over and puffing up and blah, 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 and all that good stuff. But no, I mean, that's the way you handle that. You let a impartial third party, the police, show up and take care of that problem. So well done if it resolved the problem.
Now, Phil, let me ask you a very personal question. You can just whisper yes or no to me. Let's say hypothetically this happened in your in the Woodlands. I think that's where you live. You call the Woodlands PD. Would you say, hi, this is Fil Waters, retired detective, homicide, PD? Would you drop that, or would you just say this is Fil Waters?
No, we had a family to start. Actually, I don't live in the Woodlands. My office is in the Woodlands, but we did have an incident. It's been several years ago, but our neighbor across the street there was a family disturbance between her and her husband,
Hmm.
And we're on acreage lots, so I mean I could kind of stay behind the trees and just kind of listen. Uh, the Someone had already called the sheriff's office, and so I was just I walked out there, and while the deputies were there, and they had put her in the back of the car, and I walked up and made sure they saw me and all that good stuff, and I did identify myself to them, and just said, if you need anything, I'm right here, and good job. So, but in terms of coming up and doing that kind of stuff in my neighborhood, no, I'm not. I'm not prone to do that.
Scott Duffey, don't lie now, because Phil said the honest answer. Would you, if there was a disturbance, would you say, this is Scott Duffey, former Lower Marion PD, there's a disturbance next door? Are you dropping that? You're not.
No, I wouldn't. No, not in my neighborhood. I wouldn't do that. But I have identified myself in past. If I've come across like car accidents, I would identify myself, so that way they probably understand a little bit what's happening and know that they're going to get some good information. So I would quickly cut through the BS.
V. Louise Arthur, I don't want to pull it up because I'm not deep. Look at this. She's our mod, and she's given us a super sticker. She's unbelievable, by the way. I'm not T-Pain, the meme queen. Maybe we will come across something that will require a meme, but V. Louise Arthur, very open about this. By the way, all our new members, I'm always crazy on Friday, but this is out of the norm, and I feel like I'm going to get crazier because the caffeine is just like coursing through my veins, and I might get wild. I don't know. But V. Louise Arthur says, in about 2 hours, I'm going to be sleeping with my tongue out of my mouth like Ethel. She says, I have a crush on Scott. You can ask my hubby.
It's nice.
That Fillmore and Scott look very sharp this afternoon. And Joel, you killed, maybe not the best choice of words, I'm not T-Pain. You killed that interview last night. Your integrity is why we all respect you. Yeah, a lot of people were like, so disappointing for the Markells. Let me tell you, a lot of people don't know what goes on sort of behind the scenes. And I spoke to Ruth Markel at length, and she was very well aware of this interview. Surviving the Survivor, 204 votes in 4 minutes ago. Who should write a book? Scott, 12%. Phil, 7%. Both, 81%. Overwhelming. Just more work for Fil Waters. Phil should write a book about Ferraris is what he should do. Look at this. I had to leave one channel because someone was saying Joel's in cahoots with the Adelsons. Okay, so it occurred to me, and I told you guys last week, we did some interview video, and I said to myself, you got the two best investigators in all the land here. Why aren't you doing more of this? So this video came out this week. It is the arrest of Donna Sue Adelson. Scott Duffey, you told me that you've done a lot of takedowns. It's the word you guys use in airports. What is it about airports that make it a good spot to take down a potential suspect? And then we're going to watch some of this.
The short answer is when somebody is entering into an airport, they really, bad guys and good guys, do due diligence to ensure they don't have any weapons. So, of course, we would still treat them like they had weapons, but we knew we'd have a better chance, especially if they're going through security today. Prior to 9/11, it was a little different. But drug addictions and some good old fugitive work during my early days, quite a few airport trips, and they were good.
Fil Waters, that's not really your world, right? You wouldn't go to airports. You were on the ground. I know you like to poke fun at the FBI, but you were probably kicking doors open the Colt 45 out. How are you making most of your arrests?
Well, no, I've made a couple of airport incidents. One was a suicide by cop in the B terminal with a guy that had an AR-15 in his suitcase and I think he had a either HK or a Glock 9mm that he shot himself at about the same time the Homeland Security agent who was working in one of the offices there, right there in that terminal, came out and shot him as well. So about the same time. In fact, it sounded like one shot. But and then I actually did something that is very rare. Was that I had a suspect that when I was working narcotics, I had checked him out of jail. He was to set up a buy for me. And he had been an informant. And he decided in the middle of all this that he was going to go to Natchitoches, Louisiana to visit his mom, who was reportedly ailing. So he gets on an airplane in Houston, Texas, and is flying to Natchitoches, Louisiana. And I went through the overhead and called Dallas Love Field DPS, which is a security, their law enforcement force for the airport, and stopped an airplane from departing at the gate.
I would do that for fun if I had the authority, but go on.
Phil. Yeah, I'm going to tell you what, that was the guys that I was talking to. They, when it was all said and done, and then they stopped the plane at the gate and got on board, found him. He was pretty easy to find, and snatched him off of it and got him into custody and brought him over to their office. And while that was all happening, I was already in my car, which was a 5.0 Mustang, and made it to Dallas, Texas, Love Field in about 2.5 hours. So I was hauled. And that's normal. That's about a 3.5 hour drive. But
you have a little light up there. When did they stop putting the light up on the roof? When did they stop doing that? It's like Starsky and Hutch days.
The Kojak lights? No, I had those in my city ride. I did not have. This was a cool car, so I didn't have that kind of stuff.
How does that stick to the roof, by the way? Is it magnetic? They used to like pop that out.
They're magnets.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we got up there, got the guy in custody. And of course, when I walked in the room, I mean, he's just looking at me like an idiot. And one of their captains or whatever, one of their supervisors over there, he walked up to him, and he's pretty funny. He walked up and he says, "That's the first time I've ever seen that happen." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Stopping an airliner from leaving the gate." And I said, "Well, had to be done." And they did it for me. So yeah, a couple of airport little incidents there. But and then I've tracked people through airports. I think I've talked about this case, but this guy from Honduras that murdered his girlfriend, we had it all on video. He's taken her body someplace. We've never recovered it, but I filed on him for murder. And I've got him at the airport leaving and at the airport in Honduras on video. So, yeah, the airport stuff's pretty sensitive. It's because you've got a lot of people there. And I think the suspects that get into the airports, and Scott, you might back me up on this, I think they think they have a degree of anonymity with just the massive amount of people that are there.
Mm-hmm.
And so they think they're gonna be able to abscond. And if people are on their game, and the police are on their game, and the timing's right, you can go in there and snatch them up. So airports, and plus, because of all the people, that's security. You've got to be concerned about all those other people. as well. Because you
That's
don't
a
know
good
what a
point.
person's going to do. And like this guy I was telling you about in the B terminal, that was not a secure area. So he was able to bring weapons into that area untouched. And, you get into a situation like that. So, those are
I think it was 6 years ago, right here, Fort Lauderdale International Airport, in the baggage area when people are going to get their bags. Guy just opened fire. It was a mass shooting. 6 people were killed. It was so like Phil just said, unsecured areas of the airport can be a big problem. Scott, look, we've got a bit of an answer here. J. Antonio B. Roman Catholic education is what he's referring to. Look at it, J. Antonio, relaxing in what appears to be a hot tub there, looking quite svelte. Scott, show everyone your shirt today, speaking of the meme queen. That is courtesy of I'm Not T-Pain. What's it say again on the bottom there? Soothing Scott, I think? Sensitive Scott.
Sensitive.
Great. What kind of reaction do you get to that shirt?
Well, I'm debuting it, so we're going to see.
Your kids like it? Will they make fun of you, or will they?
Well, definitely. It's definitely make fun of Dad wearing this T-shirt, but it's nice. Courtesy of the STS Studios.
You know that Scott's a real investigator because he noticed immediately that beautiful hat over Phil's left shoulder on the coat rack there, and hoping that by the end of the show you can put it on for us and we can see it actually on your head. Look at this from Mia Bedio here. Mia Bedo. You and the I like saying Mia Bedio. I don't know what I just said. You and the STS team are working so very hard on advocacy journalism. Treat yourselves today. And here's to the Super Bowl halftime show. I was hoping to get there in 2024. The halftime show might wait till 2025. I'd like now that I'm thinking more about it, I'd like AC/DC to introduce Phil. We'll walk out to AC/DC playing live, and then on the other stage, we'll have Def Leppard for Scott Duffey. Pour some sugar on me, and he'll walk out.
I've actually worked security for Def Leppard.
You have? That must be fun, Phil Waters. Have you met them?
Yes. I got my picture with them. Yeah. That was after their drummer lost his arm in a motorcycle accident.
I was just going to ask you that. So was he one-armed when you met him?
Well, of course he was, Joel. He lost his arm. So the amazing
hold on,
thing,
is it his right arm or left arm?
Oh, I don't even remember. But
because if it's his right, it's a little odd. Like, how do you shake hands? Do you just go
one-armed drummer? Well, you shake hand with his left. I mean, you shake what you have available to you. I mean, it's not rocket science here, right? So
listen, on Fridays we cover everything, man. We're covering left.
Yeah, but a bunch of good guys, and they're still out there rocking. So
rocking.
Yeah, really cool. I was walking. In fact, I took my son at the time, who's he was probably, I don't know, probably 14 years old, and he was into guitars and all that, and of course their lead guitar player was up there playing Crossroads, Eric Clapton, which is pretty cool. I mean, just to do the sound check. But anyway, good guys. So Def Leppard would be a good choice.
Look at this. Ski Hat Sarah. Haven't seen you. I miss you, Ski Hat Sarah. Will your book be available? Look, they asked. I didn't bring it up, but since she did, there's the QR code. And yes, 100%. I had a very long talk with the publisher. That's why I'm asking you about Fil and Scott, because I want them to write books. I just think it'd be fascinating. I love these stories. So I feel like they should write books about their cases, their lives, what they've gone through. But this book will be available on Audible, and it will be available as a Kindle book as well. And I'm excited about it. And I'm bugging Carm because we are going to get cracking on our little publicity tour. Let me sort of set the scene here before I get too carried away, because there's other insane questions I wanted to ask, but I don't remember what they are. So for those who haven't been following, because Fridays is a little bit weird, we have been all over the Dan Markel murder. He was an FSU law professor murdered in 2014. 2 hitmen, one pled guilty and is serving a sentence, which he's going to get out fairly soon. The other hitman, the actual trigger man, is in prison for life. His name is Sigfredo Garcia. there was a middle woman named Katie Magbanowa. All of them were convicted. Well, the ex-brother-in-law is a guy named Charlie Adelson. He was dating Katie Magbanowa. So that's the connection. Charlie Adelson, who was a wealthy periodontist, drove a Ferrari, Phil. He was just convicted in November and is now set to face a life sentence in prison. And as they say in Florida, life is life. Well, a week after his conviction, which was November 6th, the matriarch of the family, Donna Sue Adelson, was arrested. Now, what's interesting about this, Fil Waters, is the attorney I had on last night could be in a little bit of hot water. And I tweeted out this particular clip a little while ago at Podcast STS, on Instagram at Surviving the Survivor. What happened was there were jailhouse calls that were being recorded after Charlie's conviction. And he is speaking to his mother. And Donna Adelson thinks that the phone has disconnected, but it did not. And she talks about how she's planning to flee the country and says that Dan, implying her defense attorney, who I interviewed, was telling her that it's time to get out now. And it could be an ethical issue. A lot of people are debating this. He came on and said there was at the time no warrant, no nothing. She was free to leave. And incidentally, Fil and Scott, she bought a one-way ticket with her husband, not a round trip, to go to Vietnam through Dubai. I don't know many elderly couples that travel with a one-way ticket halfway around the world. So that sets the stage. The FBI had eyes on her, Scott's agency. She gets to the airport, and this happens. We're about to watch it together. Let's watch this. It's a 36-minute clip. I'm not going to do that to you, but let's watch the first little part of it, and then we'll get some breakdown. We'll go back and rewatch parts.
Alright, how are you? You have an ID? Alright, how are you? You have an ID? Yeah. You're under arrest for cell phone. No, I don't want to give it to you. Why do I have to?
Because my attorney said not to.
Why do I have to?
Okay, so this is the very abridged version here. So that is behind this hairy long arm here. That is Donna Sue up there. Her husband, Harvey, who's 80 years old. This gentleman, I don't know if you guys can see the cursor. This arm right here. Are you seeing that cursor?
No.
Probably not. The arm you see with the black watch on the wrist, that, Scott Duffey, is FBI agent Pat Sanford, who has testified in the other trials, and he's there now to arrest the matriarch. Scott Duffey, you're the FBI agent. When you watch this, what do you see?
Well, I could easily tell who the FBI agent was because of the black portfolio under his arm during an arrest. Not, but the
do all FBI agents carry those black portfolios?
I have a few left. Yeah.
Okay, nice.
It's what of course what's interesting is, of course, he says you're under arrest for murder, and she didn't really seem to blink an eye. She was more concerned with protecting her phone than, hey, I'm about to go to jail and not go on my one-way trip to Vietnam. So it was, but it looked like she was expecting it, just hoping that she had a few more minutes to escape.
A lot of people say she, the most agitated she is in this part, but a lot of people said she was probably had already taken a pill for the flight. Maybe she was a little calm. She does yank her phone. The COE gave me like the shorter than Cliff's Notes version of this video, but let's go back, Phil. Let's watch this again and get your take.
Alright, how are you? You have an ID? Yeah. You're under arrest for cell phone. No, I don't want to give it to you. Why do I have to?
Because my attorney said not to.
Why do I have to?
So her attorney says not to give it to her. They're battling over the phone. Fil Waters, your breakdown. What, by the way, we had a behavioral expert on here. It was interesting, but you're the investigators. What do you see, Phil?
Well, I think her initial response is just she's kind of incredulous. She doesn't, you know, she's kind of like, really, you guys, she likes to be in control, obviously, and she's trying to maintain that control. And then when they go for the phone, she's going to demonstrate further that, you're not taking my phone. Get your hands off my phone. I'm running this thing. And I think that's just her general nature. I think that's who she is. She's done that all her life. And now she's in a situation that she does not have control over. And who's the goober head standing next to her? Who's that guy?
That is her husband, Harvey Adelson. Harvey Adelson would be the goober head. He's
okay. Well,
80.
Harvey looks a little gobsmacked through that whole deal. Like, what? Yeah, that's kind of a fun. I was watching him more than I was watching her. He was that was kind of funny.
Now, Scott Duffey, this is an elderly couple. Pat Sanford, the lead FBI agent there, they seem to be pretty relaxed, but and they do. This is a part of the airport where they have gone through the jet. They're actually just about to board. The door to the left, that stainless steel, actually leads to the plane, and to the right is where you give your ticket. So they're in a secure area. But Scott Duffey, do you have to be concerned about your own safety as law enforcement, even if it's a 73-year-old woman and 80-year-old male that you are arresting?
100%. Yep. No, don't let your guard down. That's why I was a little joking about the black portfolio. His hands should have been absolutely free for whatever could have taken place, not knowing the reaction of people, like Phil said, total control, money, and all of a sudden it all comes crashing down. People can do the totally unexpected. So,
yeah. I mean, she could have hypothetically had a pen and tried to jab Pat Sanford, God forbid, in the neck or something. That's why you would have both hands available to you, Scott. Is that correct, Scott?
Just always. It's the pen is
Scott,
dangerous.
how fast could you take Donna Sue Adelson down if she came at you, Scott Duffey? Don't be immodest. How fast would it happen? Seconds? A second?
Perhaps the portfolio, the booklet would be thrown, hitting her neck. Maybe it was going to be used as a weapon in case.
One of my biggest regrets in life at CrimeCon, you guys were supposed to show me takedowns and we completely forgot. So this CrimeCon, we're going to do that. Let me play little bits and pieces through here. And there's 2 other clips. I actually find this interesting to speak to you about this. So she's obviously by the way, people are like, oh, Donna is never going to make it through trial. She's 73. To me, she looks fantastic. She's lean. She's kind of athletically built. They take her on like a 30-minute perp walk through the airport. She's fine. But let's watch here, because there are a couple things that the body language expert said, which Dr. G, by the way, who's awesome, pal of mine. Here we go.
You have an ID?
So they're looking at the ID. Right there, when he says you're under arrest for the murder of Dan Markel, and that is Pat Sanford, who's been on this case. Fil Waters, she says, it's tough to hear, but she says, oh, here we go again. How do you decipher such a comment, Fil Waters? Oh, here we go again.
Well, again, she's acting as though that that she's got nothing to do with this. She can't believe it's happening, and so her commentary is, oh, here we go again. So, I mean, it's a woman that is used to being in control of whatever her destiny may be, and she is now finding herself in a position. So she's trying to blow this off. She's trying to minimize what's happening right now, and thinking that, I guess, that she's going to somehow convince these guys with a warrant that you're wasting your time and you're harassing me. I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere along the line here that comment wasn't made. This is just harassment, yada, yada, yada. So I don't find her reaction to this any different than what I would expect coming from a person like her.
Phil, do you find it troubling that the attorney who I just interviewed is on a recorded jailhouse call? He's not on it, but she is talking about him, essentially saying, Dan told us that, this is the time to get out, basically, in so many words. Is that disturbing to you as an attorney? Not you as an attorney, but him as an attorney.
That an attorney would say something like that?
Correct. That's what I meant.
Attorneys saying crap wouldn't surprise me at all. So, and you know what? And I mean, this is her saying he said that, right?
We know she's on a jailhouse call and she's talking to her son.
But that's what I'm saying. It's her saying that
her
he
correct.
said this.
She's invoking his name. It's not him. It is not him.
Yeah. So, I mean, people like this, they hear what they want to hear. And, I would not be surprised if there was a discussion, if she said something like, well, I guess I just need to get out of here. And he may have responded with, well, yeah, but that's just going to cause a bigger problem. So I'm not convinced. I don't think there's not enough evidence here that her attorney told her, yeah, you need to get out of town. And I'm sure her attorney is quite capable. And I don't know how long her attorney's been in practice, but
25 plus years.
How long?
25-ish.
25 years. So, I mean, I guess there might be an attorney that might tell somebody something like that, but I don't know. Since it's a hearsay, to use a legal term, since it's a hearsay thing, it's her saying it. Is she saying it to somehow justify what she wants to do because that's what she thought she heard? I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff here going on. So
one of the theories or the thoughts out there is that the state could ultimately call him as a witness about her trying to flee, which would basically force him to be recused from the case. But we're far off from that happening. By the way, there's a hearing.
Oh yeah, put him on the stand under oath.
Yeah, that might happen.
If you want to get it resolved one way or the other, he's either going to perjure himself or he's just going to say, yeah, I this is the way I said it. I would imagine he's going to say, this is the way I said what I said. She interpreted it as leave the country, whatever. But
Scott Duffey, what about the fact that this couple that you're looking at, by the way, look at Harvey's just gazing into his wife's eyes at 80 years old. By the way, he looks pretty fit too. Scott Duffey, what about the fact, and I argued about this with Dan Rashbaum last night, that they bought a one-way ticket. Now, these are people with a lot of financial means. If it were me, I would be on a boat to Cuba and flying out of Cuba to Canada and Canada to where? Why the hell would you buy a one-way ticket? And in your opinion, is that consciousness of guilt?
Yeah, and I think the law has evolved over the years with regards to flight being an indicator of guilt. You have to find other pieces to put together, but I think it seems like they let her get to this point as like a retail theft. Hey, let somebody get to the point that it looks like they're taking what they're taking and removing it from the store and then make an arrest, as opposed to why not lock her up at her house, in the car, at a signal or whatnot, and then just remove her. So it seems like this is they let this go as far as they can. So it would be very difficult to refute having that one-way ticket. It's a very difficult thing, I would think, to defend that, hey, we're just leaving for a week, and maybe we'd get a cheaper one-way ticket back or something. I think it plays into the prosecution's hand with regards to having that ticket, in the event that maybe she would want some sort of bail, that it and I've used it plenty of times. Hey, we have evidence to show that they were fleeing, and if they're given bail, they will flee again. So bravo to everybody in letting it get to the point that they needed to secure that she'll remain in jail until court.
By the way, on our new just launched second channel, which is Best Trials in True Crime, we are airing the Michelle Troconis trial, and it's getting interesting. The judge today now kicking out a second juror for speaking about the case. He was very annoyed. The Honorable Kevin A. Randolph, who sounds like Morgan Freeman, very annoyed. Some people are saying there could be a mistrial. Things are heating up. Scott Duffey, Pharaoh Gamma was asking, why would they take Harvey's wallet? I mean, well, not wallet, his passport, if he was not under arrest. Do you think they gave him back the passport?
Yeah, I think that was just a preliminary, making an ID that we have the right people, right? Because they're gonna, hey, do you have the right people? Yes. Not only do I know what they look like, but I had their passports, or her passport. He's with her, so I can see, for the sake of just temporary holding on to things, for example, bags and whatever, that then, as long as there's nothing that they foresee in the future of pursuing against Harvey, that they would provide that passport back prior to him leaving. Because I did, and I think as you go along, there are going to be things that he's requesting to take back with him.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I don't know how the feds look at it, but I mean, Harvey's going to be detained. They're in the middle of an arrest. He's with her. There is a possibility there that he could be involved in hindering apprehension. So they're in terms of taking his passport and getting him identified and detaining him there, they're well within the scope of that investigation to do that.
By the way, Phil, this is a teaching moment for you, and I know you'll enjoy this. One of my questions, and I didn't know this, one of my questions was, because I never heard him read the Miranda rights. But that's only for custodial interviews. Is that right, Phil?
Well, that's television stuff you're talking about there.
Yeah, I never heard him say you have the right to remain silent.
Well, because there's at that point in time, it's not necessary to read those Miranda warnings. Now, if they get her to an interview room, then they will. It'll be a custodial interview, and they will read Miranda, and she will need to waive those rights and carry on that conversation. But this business about reading Miranda upon an arrest is more television stuff than it is reality. So I can't, I can only think of one time in the course of a capital murder investigation that we read Miranda to this guy up on the arrest. And that was because we wanted to interview him or have a short conversation with him almost immediately. So in fact, that guy ended up getting Miranda read to him probably 3 times through the course of that process of an arrest, that initial interview at the scene of the arrest, and then getting him to the interview room, reading Miranda again, and his waiving it again, and then going off into another interview with him. And then in those days, we were audio recording the interviews, but we had just gotten in homicide the latest, greatest video equipment, which was all VHS tapes. So that was the latest, greatest thing going. And my partner and I decided at the time because all the old school guys that trained us were very leery of videos. But we decided between the two of us that, look, let's video that. Let's take another statement from him and get him to demonstrate, and we'll video. So that's what we did. So in the course of that one arrest, he was read Miranda 3 different times. And so it's necessary when it's necessary. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Remind me to come back to cassette tapes, but Phil, I hate to put you on the spot. Could you recite the Miranda rights right now if asked to do so, verbatim? Don't Google it, Phil. I see you looking at your monitor.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Could you recite your Miranda rights right now?
Probably could. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law, and probably will be used against you at your trial. You have the right to have an attorney present during any questioning. And then if you cannot afford an attorney, you will have one appointed for you, and you have the right to terminate this interview at any time.
Does it have to be verbatim? Like if you miss a word, is that a problem?
I never recited it. I always read it off the card.
But I'm saying, if let's just say you did, let's just say you forgot your card one day, you recited it, but you miss a word. Is that a problem?
No, but
It's not.
I didn't do that. I can say that is one thing I have never done. I know you're never supposed to say never, but never recited Miranda. It was always off what we called the blue card that was issued to us from the Harris County District Attorney's Office.
Scott Duffey, same with you. Would you always read?
Oh yeah, I totally agree with him there. Because you just don't want one little word that could be used by the defense. So absolutely, I did a verbatim off the card.
And you also call a blue card in the FBI. What do you call it in the FBI?
You know, everything in the FBI has an FD, FD, a dash, and then a number. And I'm trying to think what the number is. I think there might be an agent on there that has one. I think it's FD 392 or 4. So 395.
Everything's a number. So that's how you guys talk. You're like, hey, John, do you have your FD 395 on you? That's how you guys talk?
Well, no, but that's how you're, that's what it is, government. But no, you just say, hey, give me your rights card.
Well, and for all you all that are paying attention, here is the blue card of which I'm speaking.
There you go. Look at that. Phil, this is a question for you once again.
Yeah. And I can tell you too that in each state there are different versions of Miranda. So this is what I've recited to you is the text. And Scott, I don't know if the Fed version is, and they're not much different,
right,
in their wording, but they are differently worded. And then the most important thing is after reading Miranda is that the person you're reading them to has to understand. And the way I read Miranda to them was, and the way I instruct officers to read Miranda is to read each right one at a time and make sure they understand each one individually. And then at the end of it, we put together, I always preach that you need to get an explicit waiver, although the Supreme Court has ruled that an implied waiver is also acceptable in that you read a Miranda, they say they understand it, and you immediately go into the conversation. And the fact that they go into the conversation implies that they understood their rights, and they are by implication waiving those rights. Now, I was never comfortable with that. I always taught and always recommended that you get a specific and an explicit waiver. And so when I would finish reading the rights, make sure they understood them, then I would say to them, it is my understanding that you are now going to intentionally, voluntarily waive those rights, and knowingly waive those rights as I've read them to you, or give them up so that we can continue this conversation. Is that correct? And they would always say yes. So that's just dotting the I's and crossing the T's so that when you get into court and you get to a suppression hearing over that statement and a question of Miranda comes into place, you don't want to be up there on the stand answering a bunch of questions about the way Miranda was read, the way they waived their rights, and so forth and so on. You want it to be explicit. It needs to be clear that they understood their rights, they understood each one of them, and then they turned and explicitly waived those rights so we could continue that conversation. Now they can exercise a right anytime during that conversation. So you can be in the middle of it, and I've had them do that before. When you start putting the heat on them, I think I need to talk to my attorney. I'm going to talk to my attorney, and that's the end of that conversation. So, but then what I always told them was after that was that if you choose to make contact, if you want to reconnect, make contact with me, I will be more than happy to sit down with you and do that. And they can do that in the moment. I've had them where I've walked out of the room and I come back in, and now they say, look, I want to tell you. And then you have to read a Miranda all over again and make sure that they understand it and make sure that they are now waiving those rights because they have chosen to recommunicate, to reconnect, and do want to tell their story. And I've never had a problem in court if you follow that guideline of Miranda.
So many things to get to. First of all, we have breaking news on STS that I find fascinating. Japan has just landed a robotic spacecraft on the moon, becoming the 5th country to reach the moon. There's one problem. They are losing power because of a problem with a solar panel on this robot. So they got all the way to the moon, but it looks like this robot is going to die a quick death. Lynn Yost, I absolutely love this channel on Fridays. It's always interesting to me. Deep Thinker Deb, Fil Waters, I think, and then I have a question for Scott, but who is Miranda anyway? I believe this is a Supreme Court case. We don't need the full explanation, but am I right about that, Phil? Is this based on a Supreme Court case?
Yeah, it's a Supreme Court case. Gosh, help me, Scott. The year 1960s, I think, sometime.
Yeah,
Better Google
60s.
that one.
Yeah, I want to say it is a 60s case.
Anyway, it's a Supreme Court case. Scott Duffey, by the way, I started in my haze after this interview last night, and I bring this up. I'll tell you why in a moment. Netflix was teasing this show. I believe it's called American Nightmare. It's really interesting. As I watched it, I started to Scott, are you watching this? Did you watch it?
I just finished it. I'm glad you.
Oh, you did. I was going to suggest that you watch it. Don't tell me. Don't spoil it. But because there's interesting Fil Waters. There are. It's all real. It's a documentary, and there's a lot of police interview footage. And the detective at one point says, "I am the puzzle solver," he said to the potential suspect. And it made me think of a Fil Waters moment. Phil, make sure you and the wife watch this. I did remember it. And there's news about this currently. Don't tell me, Scott, but let's revisit that next week. But Fil Waters, watch American Nightmare. I think you'll like it. You haven't had enough crimes to solve in your life. This is another one. Look at this. I did not ask about this. I'll even take the video down for a moment. The new book of Joel and Carm, will it be available? It already is available in Canada for pre-order. If you go to Amazon, you can order it. Book tour to Toronto is definitely happening. Carm doesn't know it, but it is definitely happening. Thank you for asking, Kitty Cat. Okay, so back to this video. Let's keep watching here. So you're under arrest. Oh, here we go again. Okay, so she pulls away, Scott Duffey. The minute she pulls away, the police officer there, is he doing his job? He immediately puts his hand on it. This is where it could get a little contentious. And Pat Sanford puts down that portfolio of his, but are they following proper procedure here?
Yeah, and without knowing everything here, my guess is there's something about the phone itself. You're not just taking a phone and passing it on to somebody saying you don't need to. There might be something on that phone, and maybe they had a search warrant for that phone as well. And so that phone is not just a phone. It could be a piece of evidence, and you do need to protect that evidence.
They
So
did
they're
have
doing-
they did have a search warrant. I don't know if they had it at this time. I believe they did, but they went back and got more devices. But we'll play this part out here.
Because my attorney said not to.
Fil Waters, what would you say to her if she said, my attorney said I don't have to hand it over?
I would say he's wrong.
Mm.
We're gonna seize the phone. And I mean, what do you want to get in a belly bucking contest over this phone with this 80-year-old woman or however old she is? So, I mean, you've got to, he's got to set the tone. You have to set the tone. I mean, depending on how you respond to her, you can't react to somebody like her. I tell this people in the interview room all the time. You cannot react. You have to respond, and there's a difference. And so he's got to maintain his cool, which it sounds like they did. And regardless of what your attorney told you, we're taking the phone now. We can discuss that issue later on, but we're taking the phone now. And
Lydia Anderson, Miranda ruling 1966, Fil Waters. You were right once again.
Miranda versus Arizona, I think it was. I'm sitting here thinking about it.
Future says, not a belly bucking contest. Fil Waters sometimes says things that people quote. I don't think that's memeable yet. There'll be something today that's memeable. Okay, so here we are.
Don't attribute that to me. I don't use that kind of language. So
there you go. Scott and Fillmore sounds like a great TV show about family values and fighting crime. It does. It does. That we could onto a meme now. All right, this is outside in the after like a never-ending walk. They get to the car, and this part to me is almost humorous. She now asks for air conditioning. Let's watch.
15 with 3105, and I was arrival at 2035.
Coming up right here, air conditioning.
Air condition doesn't go to the back because of the vent, because of the plastic.
We open this a little bit then. That's fine. It'll be freezing. Yeah. You'll be glad you have it.
Scott Duffey, what do you make of this portion of the tape? She asks there, can I get some air conditioning? And the police officer says, you can't, because there's a barrier up because you're a criminal and you're a suspect or a presumed criminal. Your take on this little tidbit of video?
It just looked like a very, they looked very hospitable to her, giving her water, helping her. I mean, so if the air conditioning is not going to reach back there, he's just saying they're not going to get another car. So it's
well, I think the comment if it had been me, I'd have said yes. I mean, what's the point in making the comment? You got a barrier, not? Well, I mean, really, come on. You're a criminal. You're under. Why is that even necessary? So, she's kind of doing a pity party. Now she realizes what's happening to her, and they let her. Of course, giving her the bottle of water, and she's trying to drink it with her hands handcuffed behind. I'm just like, oh,
it was good.
I mean,
she asked for more.
Really?
She asked for more,
and they give her a little bottle.
No matter what the circumstances are, you got to treat her with dignity and respect. Just answer her freaking question. She says, "Is there air conditioning in the car?" Yes, there is. Could you unzip I think she, because of the heat or whatever, unzip her front there, and that the lady officer did that. Female officer did that. So, I mean, I just would have handled this a little differently. And remember, you want this woman to be your friend if you're going to try to attempt to interview her.
Good
And
point.
this is why now these guys are harness bulls, right? These are uniformed police officers putting her in the car, blah, blah, blah. They're transporting her to wherever they're transporting her. And when I had these guys doing the same thing when I was working, if I had them transport my suspect down to homicide for the interview, I know how the harness bulls are likely to treat them. And they're not going to treat them in the same fashion in which I am in terms of, being courteous and that kind of a thing necessarily. They're going to be straightforward. We're doing the job, blah, blah, blah. And so when they get to the interview room in cuffs by the officer that transported them, I'm always there to meet them. And I direct the officer to remove the cuffs. So that does a couple of things. Number one, it allows me to show some empathy to them in their situation. And it shows them I'm the one in control. I'm the one directing what happens in this room. So there's a purpose behind everything that a homicide detective or an FBI agent does in the course of an investigation and in preparation to interview a suspect. So all that stuff right there about the air conditioner and all that discussion, to me, would work to my advantage in the interview room if that's where they took her. Because now I can tell that officer who made that little snippy comment, take the cuffs off of her. And Ms. Adelson, would you like a bottle of water? So I'm just telling you, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that, I might have handled that a little different. I didn't see there was much point in being snippy. But
this is all really very fascinating. Nothing is serendipitous. It is all done on purpose. Sage Lake, the footage shows her last moments of freedom ever. That freaks me out. By the way, Black Widow is speaking to Space Coast, and I meant earlier on we were talking about Def Leppard and AC/DC. A little inside baseball. Space Coast is an unbelievable guitarist, giant Deadhead, big Grateful Dead fan, and knows very musically gifted. He also produces music. I think that could only be a positive for the women of STS Nation, but very gifted musically. He would be modest about that, but extremely talented. Ruthless. I love this. Fil is the Don. Don Waters. There you go. Scott Duffey.
I'm not sure how to take that. I don't know.
Yeah, I would take it as a comp. I wish someone would call me.
I mean, the who should write a book kind of thing. Given the stats that you showed, I kind of felt like Ron DeSantis in Iowa.
This is always a part of the show where I'm amazed. Our numbers are going up instead of down. I expect it to be a 3 in the live chat, and somehow it is close to 2,000. Look at this from Black Widow. I could listen to Fil forever. He reminds me of my dad. That's probably not something he loves. You could say older brother, Black Widow.
Well, I mean, look, I'm an old, that didn't bother
You're not old, Fil.
I mean, come on.
You're not old. Speaking of old, Scott Duffey. I meant to bring this up over the VHS comment. Laying in bed yesterday, minding my business before getting ready to do the Rashbaum interview. I don't know what I was doing. My daughter, who's homesick, comes up to me and says, "Daddy, what's a cassette tape?" And in that very moment, I wanted to leave planet Earth because I've realized that I am now this old man, which I'm not really, but it's interesting how the generations come and go. Remember, Scott Duffey, you'd ask your parents a question like, what's a radio? Or, what's whatever it was back then. What was black and white TV like? Those types of questions. Well, now that is us, Scott. Does that ever demoralize you when your kids ask you, what is a cassette tape? What is a payphone? What is a record? Does that demoralize you?
I don't have to worry about the record
Hmm.
because my youngest is a big vinyl.
Hold on. Breaking news. Scott has many fans with a crush in Beantown, Boston. Look
Wow.
at this.
Hmm.
Yeah. Go ahead, Scott.
So my youngest is a big vinyl guy. So at
Mm.
16, he's realizing the pretty cool effect of records. I will still catch myself in a classroom saying tape recording. So we don't tape record, right? It's recording. There's no tape involved anymore. So it's I still have to, I'm still learning, catching up. But you know, the payphone is one. I've showed my class of young, late teens, early 20s of a payphone, and I'll get, dead stares. What is that? So it's pretty sad to see some of these artifacts that we have not too long ago that are long gone.
And Scott, when you're teaching, do the young ones throw around words and you have no idea what they're speaking of?
Oh yeah, no, that's where I learned. It's just like in the drug game.
Hmm.
You got to learn it
Interesting.
by people who speak it. So it's that's
Give
the
me
way it
give
is in
me
the classroom.
give me like a drug term, by the way. Give me something like a
Oh, I can
drug.
tell you anything I know is old, is already
But
it changes.
but give
I
give
would
me
say
give me
changes
something
every
like
year.
but give me something that you used to say, like I don't know. Give me something.
I mean it's two, keys, like
Keys.
short for a kilo. Give me a couple of keys. I'm
Mm.
just trying to think of some terms. Give
It can
me
be different depending on what part of the country you're in.
yep.
That's true too.
I know
That's
when we were talking with when we were dealing with crack dealers, in Texas we call them rocks.
mhm.
When I ran with a buddy of mine up in Boston who was on an anti-gang unit, and we ran through the freaking Boston streets, I was jumping out with him. I didn't even have a gun with me. That was pretty stupid. But anyway, chasing these guys into these high-rise ghetto areas, and they called them hops.
Hmm.
So they would have little individual bags. They were very user friendly. They had their rocks were, our guys, they would pull them out of their mouth and hand them to the guy. But these guys had little tiny Ziploc bags. I mean, little teeny tiny Ziploc bags that had a rock in it. And so up in Boston, when I was running, we called them rocks. They called them hops. So depending on where you are in the country, I mean, there's all sorts of, weed, pot, doobies, joints.
I had a dog named Doobie. I had a dog name, but it wasn't for joint. Doobie, and I don't know who named this dog. I think my sister, but in Hebrew it means teddy bear, and the dog's name was Doobie. And then we found out we were kids what it really meant. Look at this. Maverick says the old dial phones. Look at this. Say walk down memory lane. Party line. Do we remember this? I remember this. I remember this very distinctly. I don't know why. I was living in Manlius. My dad was doing his residency there, which is Syracuse, New York. Never seen that much snow in my life. And I remember we got something called a cable box, and it was like this big with a thing on this side to like move up. Like if you had it in the up position and hit this thing, it was channel 2. But if it was in the middle position and you hit this thing, it was channel 62, whatever. But how many of us remember having to get up from the sofa and go to the TV to change the channel? And we had about 3 choices. By the way, very nice comment from Mr. Erickson, attorney at law, who says he loves this show. Just amazes me that anyone loves the show.
Let me
go ahead.
To interrupt, of course. I'll get my first interruption in.
Yes,
let me say
do.
something real quick about Miranda. It just now struck me. So even if the agents do read her Miranda and so forth and so on, and she says, I want an attorney and all that good stuff, even after all that is done, she will be taken, as is any suspect, after an arrest, and they will be magistrated. So they'll be taken to a magistrate, a judge, and the judge will read them their rights again. And at that point in time, can you afford an attorney? And they'll make those declarations then. So there's a whole process in which rights are administered and read to whoever the suspect and potential defendant is going to be. So even after we interviewed people custodially and they read their rights, then they were once that interview is over with, then they're booked into the jail, and then they appear in an arraignment in a hearing, and they're magistrated and read their rights again in a formal setting. So, Miranda is pretty much through the process is going to be present in several different stages.
No one more passionate and a better teacher in law enforcement than both Fil Waters and Scott Duffey. Maureen Walsh. Scott is so softly spoken, you'd never think he was an FBI instant D agent. I don't know what the hell that means if you cross him. That's why he went unnoticed and fit in. Scott, did this personality trait of yours to be so sensitive and soft-spoken, did it help you when you were doing undercover work? Because you kind of would just fit into different. You could put a big earring in right now and paint a tat sleeve. You could look like a drug dealer. But did you fit in because of this personality of yours?
Well, I didn't do undercover work. I did a undercover job one time, but I didn't go down the road of being an undercover agent. I'm a little bit remiss about that, but because there's some pretty cool guys out there who have done some great undercover, jobs.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and so I miss not having gone down. It's a big commitment. But I will say,
I don't want to compete with you guys, but I did go undercover as an investigative reporter at Fox 5, and you guys take murders off the streets. I unearthed a hot dog vendor who was blowing his nose on a tissue and then wiping the hot dog with it. We got that on video. I was saving millions of New Yorkers from the hot dog vendor while you guys were taking down murders. Scott, I didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry.
But that's important because I love those New York hot dogs.
Well, there's a lot of snot on.
That's why they have that unique flavor.
Yes, the ads. We literally had it. Of all the things I did at Fox 5 in New York, that video I did a story where we caught the air traffic controllers at the Westchester Airport, which at the time it's a commercial airport. But at the time, it was the airport that Barack Obama was flying into and out of as president. We had video of the air traffic controllers doing this, snoring, dead asleep as planes were coming in and going out. And story did
that's
okay.
a rough job, man. Let me tell you something.
They were doing everything you weren't. Everything you weren't supposed to do, bringing laptops in. They had TVs. You're not supposed to. Look at Joel, Erica Spears, trying to one up Phil. I'm story topping, as my wife taught me. But no, of all the video, the hot dog guy with his dirty black and brown crusted fingernails, snotting on the hot dog, that got the most attention. Don't ask me why, but it did. You know what? I'm done with Donna Adelson. I don't care about her arrest at the moment anymore. We're going to move on from here. Let me just see where we are with the comments. My selfie story in New York City. What was that? I don't remember that. Was that when I was begging for Twitter followers? I don't know what that is. My undercover story. I did some really brave things in New York. I took down the hot dog vendors. Okay, moving on here. This is a interesting story. Caught my attention. Look at this. Look at this from Miss Brazy. No offense to Scott here. Best guest Phil. My all-time favorite detective, Fave.
Thank you.
Yeah, we had three of the shortest.
Appreciate that.
We had three of the shortest clips ever. We couldn't get through it. Michelle Cavernos, this is the best show ever. Again, not me because of these guys, but this is why we will be a Super Bowl halftime show. People think I'm crazy. I know they think I'm nuts, but it's going to happen. Joel, we really need to get Fil and Scott's take on the Karen Reed case updates, FBI's investigation. I'll be honest, ever since I had Turtle Boy on my show, and, I wish this guy nothing but good. I don't want to see anyone in his situation. Fil and Scott, I don't know if you know this story, but I'll make it very short. And I don't think these guys have been following it. I'll get back into it. Very long story short. In Boston, there's a woman named Karen Reed. She's dating a Boston police officer. They have a couple of drinks. She is then
Yeah.
accused of running him over. Do you know the story, Phil?
I read about the story, right? And
Yeah.
she's
Well,
got
so
her
there's
story, and yeah.
So there's a YouTuber, a blogger, or whatever you want to call him, named Turtle Boy, and he's got Turtle Riders, and they'll probably send me
Yeah.
tons of hate mail. And he got arrested for I'm brain dead, but he got arrested for messing with the investigation, witness intimidation. Look at this, Raymond Weiss. Anyway, Turtle Boy is now in jail, trying to raise money. And Phil, I don't know. Do you have thought? Are you familiar with it, Scott?
No,
We'll get back on it. Long story
Mhm.
short, I did a show on this a long time ago, and I invited Turtle Boy on with Wendy Murphy, who is a very, very smart attorney. And Turtle Boy and Wendy Murphy got into it. It was the craziest live moment on our show. Phil, please comment about Karen Reed, whatever you'd like to say about that.
Well, I just know it's a very. I mean, I'm only reading what I read about it, and it's two very different conclusions, right, from her side and the police side, and a lot of hateful feelings going back and forth. I think I remember I think I watched the Turtle Boy thing with there was
Wendy
something
Murphy.
Did I watch
it
that
was
exchange on there? And
yeah,
he
it was. I think you did. It was wild. They got into it.
Yeah, and he's just he's a jackass, right? I mean,
he's also
wasn't
charged with
impressed with him at all. He was supposed to be the all-knowing.
Well, he's
about
kind of
that.
owns the story, but there's all kinds of conspiracy theories that he's all kinds of things. But I want to say, and I'm not T-Pain pointing out, part of his arrest has to do with domestic violence charges. But
to answer your question, I mean, I really don't know. You read both of the. It's one of those cases where who do you believe here? The police are saying this. She's saying this. I've seen some points on both sides. So without understanding the total scope of that investigation, it's one of those things where I can't really come down on either side of that thing. So because
here's
the whole situation was screwed up from the
Yeah.
beginning anyway. Right? I mean, they were all drunk or something, seems like. And
some people think it's a big cover up by the Canton Police Department and they're framing her. That's what Turtle Boy thinks. But look at Rassler's mom. I'm a turtle rider. Thank God he brought the story to light. Huge corruption. Rassler's mom, if you can. I mean this sincerely. I don't wish what happened to Turtle Boy on anyone. The guy was nice to me. He came on the show. Seems like to me, whatever. I didn't have an issue.
Well,
with
look,
him,
if he made decisions to interject himself in a way that got him arrested, that's on him. Feeling sorry for him because he decided he wanted to get his 15 minutes of fame out of this thing. There's no sympathy there for somebody like that.
Here's Bellamy.
That was my impression of him. Is that he likes
I truly don't. I truly not covered enough since I got a little after that whole episode. I was like, I went to school in Boston and I love everyone in Boston, but it's a wild place. And, Turtle Boy was covering it. Look at this. I just watched that episode. It was Wendy that messed that show up. Wendy can be tough. Wendy's very smart. No, you can say a lot of things about Wendy, but one thing about Wendy is she is very smart, no doubt, and for sure. But what I was saying is, Turtle Boy, hope you get out of jail. Hope everything turns around for you. Wish you nothing but the best, and may the truth come out in this story. But enough of that. So moving on to Pueblo, Colorado. Scott Duffey. A Pueblo, Colorado man suspected of killing a woman. He left her body in a creek. So police respond to this homicide. And it all comes to light before I get to sort of the crux of the story. this guy's roommate. So the suspect here is Solomon Martinez, 26 years old. He is the suspect. He goes to a car wash in Pueblo, Colorado. And by the way, when I'm looking this way, I'm actually looking at Scott on my monitor. I don't mean to be rude, but that's just the way the setup is. We're going to have to fix it at some point. But Scott Duffey, this guy Martinez goes to a car wash. It just so happens that his roommate happens to be at this car wash, and he notices bloody hands. And he also notices from the trunk that he is lifting and moving something that appears to be wrapped and heavy. He gets kind of suspicious. He doesn't call authorities, but somehow he does eventually, and they tip off police. Here it is. Police were first tipped off about a body in the creek by one of Martinez's roommates. According to the affidavit, Martinez allegedly arrived at a car wash that they were both working on their cars on January 9th, as I said, with blood and clothing on his hands. So let's stop it right there. Scott Duffey, this sounds kind of like and I hate to say this because no homicide is sort of your typical homicide. I was going to say garden variety, but so far it appears this guy committed some sort of sinister act, does it not? Scott Duffey, he shows up to a car wash, bloody, with a big stiff something rolled up in something that he's trying to move with difficulty. Would you find that suspicious?
I would find that suspicious, but the body was dumped. So he's going to the car wash with the body still in it, as opposed to after the body's dumped in the river? Am I missing?
That's
something?
I think it was on the way to. I think he was on the way to dump it off, to dump the body. Yeah, the body is eventually found in a river or creek. In Fountain Creek, it is called, in Pueblo, Colorado.
I mean, this is why people get caught, and good for them for, putting themselves out there so they can be caught and bring that trail of witnesses across. It's, I often say in any crime, people do not really think of the aftermath, cleanup, etc. And often that's where they do themselves in.
I'm coming off my caffeine high, and it was a very long week, and I love these two guys so much. I literally could start to cry. I could weep from emotion. I really do love these guys, and I'm going to try not to cry.
What was in that coffee?
Yeah, something's in there. So Fil Waters, a friend of the roommate, also claims now he decides he's going to speak to police finally, that they were in a car with him on that same day when they drove to Mohawk Road. And that on that day, according to the affidavit, the suspect actually, this is a different witness from what I understand. He takes out a decapitated woman's body from the trunk of his vehicle and he drags it towards Fountain Creek. This was the newspaper on record. So this was a separate witness who now sees him dragging the body into a creek. And believe it or not, whoever was with him apparently videotaped some of this. And upon his arrest, the suspect claims that the witness who recorded the video was actually the murderer. How do you sort this out, Fil Waters?
Well, of course, that's one of those deals. That kind of a case gets sorted out in the interview room if those folks will talk. So you've got what, 3 people involved here now? You've got a suspect and 2 witnesses, depending on who they are in this scenario.
Correct. There is a punchline to this story coming, Phil. There is a punchline.
Oh boy. Okay.
Yeah. But is any part of this, we talked about this last week, does any part of this story so far surprise either of you?
No. Not
Okay.
really.
Okay. Well,
you got an advantage here when you got 3 people involved. I will tell you this, it's the old Hell's Angel adage, right? The best kept secret among 3 people is when 2 of them are dead. So You got 3 people here that all have knowledge of this single event. And now it's a question of, in the interview room, pitting one against the other. And let's see who if they can come up with who's telling the truth about who actually did. And then, of course, you're looking at the evidence, whose car it was and who, so forth and so on. So you've got evidence that you can use in each one of these settings.
We are certainly getting to the. Look at this. Elf, she can't watch tonight. She has to go to work. Work is overrated, Elf. Do what I do and just putz around all day. What is this? Mish Cavernos in Cape Town, South Africa. One of my oldest friends in the world. I've known her a few months. The fact that nothing surprises anyone anymore is a problem. I think that is true. So, Fil Waters, they make the arrest. They go in, they get more information, and they arrest this Martinez guy, Solomon Martinez, 26 years old. And he's wearing a coat. And lo and behold, in this pocket, they find the severed hand of a woman in a Ziploc bag. And the police say, this would be you, Fil Waters. You would ask this question. How long has that hand been in your coat pocket? To which he responded, 3 days.
Well, in homicide, we would call that a clue.
Fil Waters,
that's a pretty and this is the guy that's saying that somebody else actually killed her. But he thought he'd take a souvenir with him. That's what he's trying to do. I've had those cases where they cut off heads and hands and, put them in flower pots and all that kind of stuff. So, I would say that's a pretty affirmative link to that guy being the actual actor in that homicide.
This is why PSS went to medical school and is as smart as she is, with a comment, caught red-handed, ? Literally. Scott Duffey.
Caught, I think the term here would be caught dead-handed.
I don't mean to laugh, and honestly, I do not mean to make light, but it's a Friday. I'm decaffeinated now.
Dark humor in homicide, brother. Dark humor in homicide.
Carm always says she got through all. You got to buy the book. Carm talks about dark humor in the book. Scott Duffey, in all your years in the FBI and in Lower Merion, PA, have you ever arrested someone with a severed hand in their front coat pocket?
No. I think
Fil Waters, same question to you, except for Houston. Have you ever arrested?
No, I guess the closest I ever got was I had to pick up this guy. I found this guy's finger who had put a bomb in a garbage can and it blew up on him. And I found the palm of his hand on a rooftop across the street. So that's about the closest. And then there was a dog in the area that ran up and had one of his fingers. I'm not going to make it through the rest of the show. What happened with the dog? It's a true story. And then the dog in the area.
Write the book, Phil. Write the book.
The dog had one of his fingers, but we didn't find all of them. But yeah.
By the way,
and a finger. That's all we.
Phil, did you know this earlier in the week? Not to digress, but I have to for a moment. Ethel, I get home after a long day of doing this nonsense, and I was tired and stressed out. And my wife hands me, my kids have all been sick this week, hands me a Mucinex, a children's Mucinex bottle for cough and sinus, and it is empty and it is chewed on. And I look over at Ethel, who's staring at me with her tongue hanging out of her mouth. And we had just literally heard a story about a dog that died from xylitol poisoning. Xylitol is in everything. So I call the vet, and immediately they say you have to call the ASPCA poison hotline. Did you know that they even had a dog poison hotline? Did you know that? Scott Scott said no. Scott, did you know this?
I didn't, so I'm going to put that on my fridge.
Yeah, so you call the poison hotline, and they take $99 before you open your mouth, and go through all the ingredients, and they say, keep an eye on Ethel. If you see vomiting, diarrhea, hives, wobbling, these are signs. She looked at me like I was an idiot. Absolutely nothing happened. $100 down the drain. That was the dog story.
I will tell you, so, dogs are not supposed to eat chocolate.
Yes. Yes.
right? It will kill them. I mean, and I think it depends on the chocolate. But my wife and I were going to a women's banquet at the church one night, and she had made this wonderful chocolate cake. And it was sitting on her desk, which is by the back door. As we were going to leave, she was going to pick it up and take it. Well, our bull terrier at the time, Lily, I come around the corner to go, we're gonna leave, and I see the cake is in the floor, and it was one of those bundt cakes, the circle thing with the hole in the middle of it.
Yeah, love bundt
cakes. He had
cakes.
eaten the entire top of it, all the icing, and the chocolate cake. So it was like half a cake.
I'm gonna story top Phil right after this. Go ahead, Phil.
And so I went into a panic. My wife went on to the women's banquet thing at the church, cakeless. I took Lily to the vet, and I'm in a panic. Well, the vet up there, they start pumping her full of fluids, right? Because what's the point here? We're trying to make the dog throw up, just like a human who's overdosed, right?
Yeah.
So she's a water tank. I mean, they got her so full of stuff, and they're out walking her around. I'm up there for an hour and a half, and Lily's just enjoying the attention. So I finally take her home. The doc says, just watch her, blah, blah, blah. But I think she's probably going to be okay. I said, great. So I get her home. I let her into the house. And she does a little whoop, whoop. And then all of a sudden, it's very silent. So I walk into the bedroom and turn the lights on. And there is this whole area that is like one big piece of snot. And then within that is all of this cake.
Oh boy.
So she has waited to get home, go into the bedroom, and throw this thing up all over the bedroom. And she's just looking at me like, this is what you wanted, right? And so that was the first. So now it is, how do you clean this up? So I got the fireplace shovel and a plastic bag, and because this snot is all connected, I'm like picking it up with the shovel and putting it in a piece at a time into this bag. It was a very interesting teaching point for me with chocolate cake and dogs, and you need to keep them outside until they puke that stuff up. But so she was fine, and nothing ever happened, beyond that.
Look at this Blackwood door. Look at this in the Republic of I've got a beef with the American healthcare. So it's a joke that every time I do something in America, got to show my insurance, got to make 400 calls. It is a ploy here. They try to beat you down. Blackwood door, you should love the healthcare in Ireland, but here, the things that you have to do to just get what you need to get is I have to go pick up medicine for my kid. They'll say, "Oh, your insurance covers this; it doesn't cover that. Let me get you a CVS." Just give me my medicine already. Get this healthcare. Should be the number one. Forget the economy. Get the healthcare on track in this country, Scott. Let me story top Bill in 1 second, and then we'll get to Scott. I'm in Sedona, Arizona when I was a reporter at K-Gun 9 in Tucson, Arizona. I went to Sedona, which is one of the most beautiful places you'll ever see. Bring my beloved Mabel Rose, who I had before my wife, before my children. Mabel, her entire life, she was food obsessed. I had a trainer once tell me she would do backflips. She was so obsessed if I trained her with food. Long story short, The only thing I ever saw her reject was a chocolate malt ball in my entire life. She was part Beagle. So when I was in Miami, I went to this open park that was connected to a Smith and Walensky steakhouse. She used to smell a fish from 500 miles away and run and get it. We're in Sedona. She eats 1.5 pounds of peanut butter fudge. Why did I have 1.5 pounds peanut butter fudge? Because I'm a sick glutton. I love it. And I was just going to stuff it into my face while I was in bed watching Netflix or something. And I called the emergency vet. Mabel looked perfectly fine. I knew she would be fine, but they forced me to do this. Stick a turkey baster down her throat with 2 tablespoons of hydrogen peroxide, and she vomited it up, and she looked pissed at me because she wanted to save her the chocolate fudge. End of the story is there with dogs. Okay, moving along here. This is your Commonwealth, Scott Duffey. A police officer in Pennsylvania says he did not, this is a difficult story, he did not intentionally rape his victim. This guy's name is Justin Hain, Hain, 38 years old. He was an officer for 2 months with the Steelton Borough Police out by Pittsburgh, Scott Duffey. It occurred when the 25-year-old woman was feeding her child. He knew the woman. He allegedly, according to reports, approaches her with a weird grin on his face after she comes out of the shower in the afternoon. The woman tells him she absolutely did not want to be touched. Police claim this officer then proceeds to sexually assault her, forcing her head into the couch so she was unable to move. She then calls the police officer on the phone. He says to her on the phone, and I quote here, "I didn't intentionally rape you." She then goes to the police, and he's arrested and faces rape charges. Your thoughts on this story, Scott Duffey? Sick.
Yeah, I think that's
Sick
it.
people.
Sick, disgusting. Whether under the color of law, so him being a police officer or a prior friend or whatever he is, that's whatever, it's just disgusting, depraved.
Fil Waters, do you think a man like, first of all, Phil, have you ever heard the "I didn't mean to rape you" defense? That's number one. And number two, do you think a person like this is prone to commit this act again if you were to get away with it the first time?
I read that article. That's the first, because of this "I didn't mean to do it" thing. And I think he'd only been a police officer like 2 months or something.
2
like
months.
that.
2 months. 2 months.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I guess my question there is, how does this guy get through a background investigation? I can't believe this is going to be the first time that something like this has happened. So I just wonder how he gets past a background. That's the curiosity to me there, but that's an unusual defense. I didn't intentionally. What other way was he doing it? I mean, that just sounds like
it wasn't like
a guy that.
Yeah, he wasn't drunk or any. I mean, it sounds like he was.
No. I mean, yeah, right. I mean, I just, I mean, did she do something that implied something, and he thought something the wrong, and that ends up being, I mean, we, back in, many years ago, that's the classic date rape, right? Kind of thing. So crazy. Yeah, that's just an insane story. There's no excuse. Him saying what he said is just ridiculous. But again, I always go back to, it doesn't make any difference whether a police officer has been on 2 months or 20 years. When somebody wearing a badge does something as atrocious as this, it reflects on every one of us that have ever worn that badge. So
100%.
That's and it just goes to make people feel uncomfortable. Not people in general, but it will make some people feel more uncomfortable about police officers, about calling him. And certainly in this woman's case, I mean, good grief. And so I hope they, he gets to have a trial and all that good stuff. I just hope that they throw the book at this guy. I mean, this is the fact that he's a public servant and doing something like this when we are all held to a higher standard, and then he does. Look, I hope they throw the book at this guy.
Now that this unintentional rape has occurred from Annie K, how can he ever be in a position of power again as a police officer, Scott Duffey?
He won't be.
He better never be.
Yeah.
There you go. I want to go back to something, but I'm afraid for a number of reasons that Phil's going to say yes. Number two, that I'm not going to be able to stomach it. And number three, that people are going to think I'm a sick human being, but I'm always curious. You were talking about the hand earlier, Phil. And you're talking about heads and stuff. Have you ever seen a decapitated head, Phil? Can I ask you that?
Well, the short answer is yes. I've seen several of them.
And I don't want to get macabre, but is there a way to process it, or does it look like what you see on Halloween? Let me put it that way.
Well, listen, there's nothing the movies can do that can make the reality any worse. So, it's always, anytime I enter the scene, I mean, it's just, you have to, the shield goes up that you're looking at it from an analytical viewpoint as a homicide detective, and it's a piece of evidence. I mean, yeah, it was a person and all that, but you can deal with that later. But at that moment in time, when you're in there looking at that stuff, you're working a scene, you're working a case. You have to be focused on what are these pieces of evidence telling me about what happened here. And it's been a different set of circumstances for each one of those cases. In fact, I've got a video of the actual decapitation taking place inside an auto parts store.
Is that is that the one that you did for? That's not the one you did for Survive. Those guys were shot, right?
No. Okay,
no,
this was
that wasn't the triple homicide.
No, that was an auto dealership. But
okay,
no, this was an auto parts store, and it was.
So you have video of this act.
Video of it, yeah. It was pretty. I mean, I won't go into the details, but it was horrific to watch.
Ooh.
And he was using a machete that was rather dull, so it took a while. And it was.
This is taking a nasty turn.
The poor man that he was. This is a tough son of a gun. He was conscious through most of it. I mean, it was just brutal. But yeah, and I've had a couple, 2 or 3 of those. Yeah. So
couple things right here. Over here, there's a red light over here for the wide shot that we don't have, but I look like Santa Claus. I've noticed it makes my cheek look red. Number 2, D Mart. I think Harm will have an issue with Joel asking the question I just asked of Phil. She'll probably call me and say you're sick. And then Black Widow. Go ahead, please.
My wife and I, we watch these when we're done. We sit down and watch, and she corrects me and all that kind of stuff. So. But she noticed that you refer to Santa Claus as Santa Claus.
Yeah, I don't know why. I just like it.
Is that a New Jersey thing? What is that?
No.
Is that a Northeastern thing?
It's a me and my friends thing. It's just like he's cute. So instead of Santa, it's like Santy. It's like Joey instead of Joseph.
Okay, all right. Because every time you say it, she goes, "Well,
Yeah.
there he's doing that again."
She's probably going to
So I'm
say it
trying to
today.
explain to her the Santa Claus thing, but
Yeah, it's like Joey instead of Joseph. It's something that my
I
friends
guess
and I.
it's just a Joel thing, huh?
Yeah, I don't know what it is. But look at this. This is a little more insight into Blackwood Door. There's a head in our local church. She lives in Ireland, by the way. St. Oliver's Drogheda, if I'm pronouncing that.
Hmm.
We go on school tours as children to see it. By the way, Blackwood Door, she sent me a very beautiful email. Thank you. And you're going to have to explain this. It's a human head, I assume. Whose head? How's it preserved? And why do people go see it? These are the questions I have off the top of my head. Speaking of decapitated heads, sorry, I didn't. Okay, let's move on. This story. So I picked a story, if you'll notice, one from Pennsylvania. This next one's Oklahoma, Phil. This is a horrific story. Horrific. Last week, an Oklahoma father, he's identified as Elliot Binney. He was arrested after police accused him of fleeing the scene of a crash. That's never a good thing, Phil. 3 family members were in this car of his. He was driving 70 miles an hour through a no passing zone. He crashes. His own daughter, 16 years old, from Oklahoma. She's a cheerleader in high school, one of the most popular girls. She is killed. And this guy, with I think it was 2 or 3 other relatives, takes off from the scene and runs to a family-owned business. It was the daughter and 3 other family members, and he tries to evade police officers. Is there a special place in hell for someone like this to abandon your own daughter, Phil, and your family?
Well, I think they found alcohol and some sort of pills or medication or something in the
Vodka.
car.
They found an empty bottle of vodka.
And I think there was some other medication, pills, something there.
Okay.
But he was obviously messed up, whatever the case may be. The guy's a piece of crap. He's a coward. Good grief. You abandon your family, your daughter who's dying. I mean, I don't know if the daughter was dead, but it doesn't make any difference. He's only looking out for himself, fleeing that scene. And of course, he may or may not have known what he had done in terms of what the effect was on the people inside the car, but that doesn't make any difference. But that's the way a drunk and a whatever other substance he may have had in, that's the way they think. It's instant paranoia. It's survival. And he knew what he did was wrong. He knew the circumstances under which he did it was wrong. And the only thing he could think to do was to flee, was to get as far away from it as he possibly could and go to some place where he thought he was going to get some sort of safe haven and somehow be able to explain himself out of being responsible for what happened. So, yeah, piece of crap, no doubt.
Look at this, Phil. Blackwood Door, an Irish person, they say Santy as well. It's not just me. Scott Duffey, do you think that this person, now that he's hit the, you can't get any lower than killing your own daughter, obviously an issue with alcohol, pills. I don't see that, but Phil is saying that, so it's possible. Do you think that, obviously he's going to eventually, I believe, serve time for this. Do you think that this will change him despite all the horrors for the better at some point, or is someone like him just irredeemable? I know if it was me, I don't know that I'd be able to go on if I did that to my own daughter. What say you?
I mean, I would just hope that after sobering up, whatever intoxication he was under, that he does realize that it's instant, that he realizes the unimaginable destruction of life that he did, not only, to his daughter and other family members, but just to everybody now that has to pick up the pieces. So, you see this time and time again, and especially for DUI related homicide accidents, they're plentiful. And you know, I've seen quite a few multi DUIs, major accidents, deaths not included, but they just keep going on, and they, you know, they leaving a trail of havoc. So you know, I hope so. But I don't know.
I will tell you this: my experience has been in these vehicular homicides that the sentencing it's typical that it's very low.
Yeah,
People don't receive sentences in these vehicular homicides as they do in a murder and so forth and so on. So I'll be interested to see when this is all done, what he actually ends up serving.
You know what? The pain that guy is going to have between his ears for the rest of his life is going to be a crazy punishment.
And let me say
Phil.
one thing, Joey. You made a comment about, is he unredeemable? Well, I would say everyone is redeemable. Everyone, there's a capability to seek redemption. So yeah, you know, that's what I would pray for this guy, because this is horrific. I mean, how do you look in the mirror every morning after this?
It's impossible, I think, but I would wish the same for him. From H2O Man, you know what, H2O, I have it, and I think I forgot because it was such a crazy week, but I'll send it to him. Did you send Phil? Did you forward the link that H2O sent me for a Ferrari that's for sale near him? Phil, do you need another Ferrari? Are you up to 3 yet? Do you need to get to 3?
Not quite yet. I just went down and looked at my 360 down here in Houston yesterday. And
what's the status? It's
coming along. Well, hopefully we're going to get it to the paint shop next Wednesday. And yeah, it was just
how's
kind of
the
cool.
knee? Are you going to be running a marathon? Or is your knee better? Is your knee as good as a Ferrari?
Oh, the knee is remarkable. Yeah, we're still hitting the physical therapy stuff 3 times a week, and I'm doing my exercises, and I'm almost to the point now where I'm starting to not notice it. So, and that's 6.5 weeks out. So it's good.
This comment amazes me. Maria Resendi, hearing STS at the Zurich, Switzerland airport, boarding to Lisbon, Portugal. What a world we live in, that someone is listening to this, of all things. I don't fully understand it, but I'm glad that you are. Look at this from Jana Island. I really appreciate this one. You did a great interview yesterday. You were a class act, did a fantastic job. Thank you so much. Scott Duffey, this is another story, and I would like your larger macro take and your cautionary warning to our audience. A Los Angeles socialite, she's set to go on trial now for murder. It happened 3 years ago. She struck and killed 2 young boys who were crossing the street with their parents and brother. 2 little boys crossing the street with their parents. Rebecca Grossman is charged with 2 counts of murder and vehicular manslaughter in 2020 after the authorities alleged that she struck Mark 11 and Jacob Iskander 8 before speeding away in September of that year. It turns out that this woman, Grossman, was car racing a former Major League Baseball pitcher named Scott Erickson. What's going on now is her lawyer is saying that they did not do a thorough enough investigation, and it was actually his car that did the damage. Why wasn't it investigated? Lawyers pointing the fingers. Scott Duffey, it disgusts me that this happens, but what is your cautionary tale? People get into cars, they get into them drunk, and bad things happen. You're an FBI retired agent. What would you say to people?
Yeah, cars and driving. So she's speeding, she's racing, right? Is intoxication involved or not involved?
I think they were leaving our restaurant, so I think it was.
Yeah. Yeah, two young lives, taken away as a result of just a horrible moment between two. I would imagine, like you said, a socialite and a former baseball player doing the most stupidest thing that they absolutely could have just um, changed. So things happen in a second, right? It's
Mm.
and these, whether they're bad impulses to go out and speak, because we have, and it may be in other cities, but it's happening rather quite a bit in the Philly area, both on within the city and the outskirts on major roadways and highways. These car roundups, and they're getting together and they're spinning their wheels, and they just think it's a good old time. But quite a few injuries have taken place, and you just watch them, right? You just could just YouTube it all
Now,
day.
Scott Duffey, let me jump in there with a hypothetical. You're with your son. You're at a pizza place. It's a sleeting, rainy night, suburban Commonwealth of PA. And you, as a former FBI agent, supervisory agent, you see 20-year-old kids being idiots doing these donuts in a parking lot at a high rate of speed. As a former FBI agent, when they are stopped, do you go up and tap on their window and say, I am former agent Scott Duffey, stop horsing around? You do that.
No. Mm-mm.
You don't. What do you do?
No, no, yeah. I mean, if somebody's already I know enough that if somebody's already involved in that type of behavior, um, their heart rate's up, their impulse
Mm.
is high, so they're not thinking rationally, and anybody going up, even a marked car, is not going to scare these people,
Mm.
as you just see time and time again, until they come back down into that reality. Um, so now it was just like earlier in the show, calling the police and say, "Hey, you send quite a few cars here before something gets out of whack." And typically, what's going to happen there is police are going to come in. They want the sound of sirens to hopefully disperse and get rid of some of where people start thinking like, "Oh, let me get out of here." Um, but no, I wouldn't. I just know it wouldn't have any effect. It wouldn't have the effect that you would hope it to have. So
Honesty. Look at this. Murray Muncie, a random comment for Scott. I went to
okay.
Methacton. Does that
Yep.
make any sense to you? What is
Yeah.
Methacton?
It's an area, it's a town, Methacton. There's
Mm.
I believe it's a Methacton school district, um, upper part of Montgomery County. Nice, very nice area.
Funny names in Pennsylvania, like the Schuylkill River spelled all weird.
Schuylkill River, Schuylkill.
COE from Vincenza Celentano. Grazie. Can you please link the new channel? Two more very quick stories. We'll wrap it up. Fil Waters, Florida teacher. This was all over the place. I'm sure you've seen this video. Petite little teacher. Her name is Joan Nadich. She was beaten unconscious by a student over a video game. He wanted his video game. She didn't want to give it to him. He's 6'6", 17 years old, dives on her, breaks 5 ribs, gives her a severe concussion and hearing loss. She wants this kid now sentenced to 30 years behind bars. She says her injuries are mostly invisible. Her speech has slowed. She's got cognitive problems. The real kind of kicker to this is her, for whatever reason, she's not getting any workers' comp. There's some sort of, I don't know, situation going on with workers' comp. They've launched a GoFundMe to help her, which has raised $106,000. What should happen? This kid's 17 years old, pounds this petite female teacher, broken ribs, severe concussion, hearing loss. Obviously, she's going to have like PTSD. Should they throw the book at a 17-year-old Fil Waters?
Sure.
And what's going on with our society, Fil Waters?
Said it before, the problems of the head and the heart. So, and these schools, we're seeing the product of over the last 50 years of indoctrinating these kids to think they can do whatever the hell they want to do.
I always get this confused, Misdemeanor OG. I'm a little tired, Misdemeanor. If it were me, you are a journalist. Correct. Correct. And thank you for correcting my grammar. I do have people who write to me about grammar. Carm tells me a great story. She was a marriage counselor, and she knows a couple that got divorced because the husband improperly used adverbs, and it would drive her insane, and eventually it caused a divorce. Look at this, Fleur de Lis, one of my new favorites, Fleur de Lis. Last story here. Once again, out of the Commonwealth of PA, and then we'll get final thoughts. I thought of Scott for several reasons during this story, and you'll hear why in a moment. Police, and this is to me, these are fascinating stories from a psychological perspective. Police filed charges against a Pennsylvania couple Friday of whatever week this was last week. James and Kathleen Cheney, Scott Duffey, they were charged after a humane officer found 77 animals and a 14-year-old boy living in dangerous conditions in the couple's home in Westmoreland County, PA, according to CBS Pittsburgh. The officer said these were the worst conditions in his 15 years in law enforcement. Smell of rotting trash everywhere. Upon further inspection, they find feces on the floors and furniture inside the house. The house had no running water. The smell of ammonia was so bad that it actually was burning the inside of the officer's navel cavities and eyes. The person from the humane office said she was in shock finding all of this stuff. Once the house was cleared, they went inside and found more animals. Among the 77 animals here, Scott Duffey, 46 dogs, 23 cats, 5 guinea pigs, a dove, and this is where you come in, Scott, a chinchilla, and a ferret. All the dogs and cats had fleas and worms. A dog, a bird, a snake, and 4 chickens were found dead. Half of the dogs had no access to food or water. The son was brought to Child and Youth Services. Scott Duffey, does any of this surprise you?
No.
The chinchilla?
No, that's staggering with the amount, but it seems like that these parents are suffering from some major mental illness and can't take care of themselves, much less anybody, their child, animals, and of course, being in Westmoreland, so it's further out there in the state. I wonder how rural it is, as opposed to is your next door neighbor who should have picked up on it. Yeah, so but being in a pretty rural area, if it is rural, it'd be it's just sad. But I've been in a few of those types of houses with the ammonia and the death of animals rotting, and amazing.
Fil Waters, 2 questions to follow up here. We always hear about these hoarding stories, and I've got some OCD tendencies, as I think you might have. But Fil Waters, why do people hoard, especially animals? And number 2, will this 14-year-old boy ever be okay as a result of this?
Well, answer your last question first. I don't know that he will. I mean, that's something that that trauma will stay with him his whole life. It's going to depend on what degree it affects him. Regarding the first questions, you know what? I've been in houses with hoarders. I've been in places where animals were the subject of the hoarding, and these folks, in most, at least the cases that when I've actually spoken with the person, they don't think they have an issue. In fact, the last house I was in was since I've been in my my company. And gosh, we walked into this house to do a security assessment. And she just turned and said, "I want to apologize for the houses. I haven't been able to get things in order here before y'all came." Like it's, like there's some magazines that were spilled on the floor. I mean, this place there had to be paths formed to get through all the stuff. And of course, she had cats in there that were using it as a litter box. So you walk in and your eyes start to bleed, it smelled like a meth lab. And these people have some real deep mental health issues. And it's very, and I even extended to her, this particular person, that I would help her. She was talking about she couldn't get things organized, this, that. And I mean, it was stuff that was like old stuff in boxes. And then it was brand new stuff with the tag still on it. And I told her that I would, as helper, try to sort some of these things out, and maybe we could get this thing organized. Of course, my thinking was maybe if we could get her to do that, we donate a bunch of this stuff to, Goodwill or whatever, but to get her in a living condition that's just more suitable and more healthy. And she didn't want it. She's going to take care of it.
This is where the phrase "sweetheart" comes from. Look what a sweetheart Fil Waters has, trying to help people. Everyone thinks he's a big tough guy, but he's got a sweetheart, this guy.
So these folks are just, and then the ones that do the animals, look, that starts out with, I'm going to take a couple, they rescue these animals, and then they rescue some more, and they rescue some more, and then they find themselves in a situation where they are doing exactly to the animals what they were trying to rescue them from.
Phil, I know I'm cutting you off here, but before I forget, it got dark here with decapitated heads. Would you be willing to put your hat on for us so we can see what it looks like? Would you be willing to do that?
Sure.
Look at this from Susie Q. How an animal responds to a person tells you all you need to know about them. I get into bed. Ethel comes up and licks my... I love getting licked by a dog. I don't know why. It doesn't gross me out. Look at that. Look at that. Let me get the comment down. The COE, when Ethel... Let's put it this way. Ethel favors me over the COE by a long shot, if it tells you. Look at that. That is an old school detective right there.
That's very nice.
Sweet hat. Yeah. I want a photo of that. The queen of memes. I'm not T-Pain. There's got to be something with Phil in this hat. We have to come up with a tagline for that. But look at that.
Well,
hat.
this fedora belonged to my late father-in-law.
Oh, wow.
So I wear it in honor of him.
Wow. I feel like you need Jiminy Glick glasses with that hat, by the way.
Oh,
I
no.
I'll lend you my glasses.
No. Thank you, but no thanks.
Is it me or did the show get dark today? I have no idea. Bye. See you later, Ruthless. I love Ruthless with her British accent. Let's end on happy stuff. Phil, what are you going to do this weekend that will make you happy?
Well, you know what? I remain joyful all the time because of the way I've been blessed and my family. So to make me happy, we're going to have hamburgers on the grill tonight. Then tomorrow I'm going to help my brother-in-law out with some paperwork on some oil leases. And I just try to be productive. Then there may be a moment to rest and so forth and so on. But I guess
Phil, how many hours do you sleep at night, Phil? How many hours do you sleep at night?
Oh, I get a good 8 8 to 9 hours.
Look at this. Black Widow. Phil's a real man, followed by Very Smooth Phil, followed by Inspector Phil, followed by Phil, followed by Phil True Detective. Look at this. Hoarding is now in the DSM-5. Scott Duffey. I really may weep today out of my love for these two gentlemen. Scott Duffey. What are your weekend plans, Scott?
Oh, so after this show, I'm going to turn on my snowblower. We are blanketed by a fantastic,
Ooh, tell us
I would
about
say
that.
close to a half foot of snow. It's fantastic.
Really? So
Yeah.
what do you say fantastic? I say thank God I don't live in the Northeast anymore. Although it's kind of snow days are fun. I'll give you that. But are you going to take a walk in the snow? Are you going to go out there today?
Yeah, I was already out there this morning. And all the schools have been canceled, so it is a good snowstorm. But it doesn't take much around here to call off schools. It's just a couple inches, but yeah, it's nice to see. I like it. I also like it when it does go away.
I'm about to bring up something that is a sore subject. Phil, your Cowboys lost, right?
Oh, golly. Let me tell you something. I've been watching the Dallas Cowboys since I was probably 7 years old. They were formed in 1960 as an expansion team. And when I watched them as a kid, Dandy Don Meredith was the quarterback. They played in the Ice Bowl against the Packers and so forth and so on and lost to the Packers. So I've been a Cowboys fan as a devotee all my life. My dad used to take us to the Cotton Bowl on Thanksgiving, watch the Cowboys. I think at that time played the Redskins. So I will have to say that debacle, that is the worst. That is the single worst defeat in the history of the Dallas Cowboys. To say embarrassing would be an understatement. I mean, that was, I couldn't, I watched it. I was just, where did these guys go? And
Phil, you're not
even Jerry Jones was speechless. He couldn't explain it either.
You're not a Texans fan? You never became a Texans fan?
Well, now they're the alternative, right? So,
yeah.
I mean, I've worked security down there for the Texans and actually the Cowboys and the Texans got together on a scrimmage deal down at U of H, and that was pretty cool. But I'll be supporting the Texans now as they go forward, and I'm also I've been a quasi Packers fan for a long time as well when I was growing up. My brother was more Packers. I was more Cowboys. But again, I mean, just unbelievable. That was a bloodletting that just would not stop. It was like, oh my gosh. So yeah, that was horrible. And I'm just getting. I think I'm getting tired of saying wait till next year. That kind of thing. So
look at this breaking news from Julie Frew. Alec Baldwin charged with involuntary manslaughter. They charged him. Fil Waters. What's going to happen? He's going to go to trial now. What's going to happen? Is he going to plead?
They'll probably plead that out unless he's arrogant enough to think he's going to get on the stand.
Will he face jail time for this? Will he go to the clink?
Oh, sure he could. Yeah, sure he could. But I will tell you, he the mistake he made was these guys like him can't keep their freaking mouth shut. So he got up there with an interview right after this happened, and he said some things. I'm sitting there going, you know what? You're an idiot. You just need to shut up, let this thing get finished, quit getting up here because you've got a platform, and try to defend yourself. And so what he did, I think, is he ended up as they further that investigation and some of the things he said. One of the most stupid things he said, well, I didn't pull the trigger. Well, of course you pulled the trigger, you idiot. You're the only one holding the gun. So, I'm a little surprised that they charged him with involuntary manslaughter. I know in Texas we have a manslaughter statute. And then the lowest statute in homicides is criminal and negligent homicide. I would have thought that would have been something like that. And I don't know Arizona law. So, I mean, it's possible that it may have the same impact in terms of sentencing and punishment, that kind of thing. But if he'd have kept his mouth shut, I would have been surprised if they did this. But once he opened his mouth and said some silly things, and then they've done, I'm sure they've done a fairly a thorough investigation. And so the DA there has decided that there are enough elements here.
Well, he froze up right there. I was just going to say we might be breaking the record for the longest show. Heidi Morin, Scott, we live in Cheltenham, and my husband grew up in Lower Merion. Know it well. Our sons went to Adat Israel preschool. How about that?
Yeah.
What have we here? What have we here? Scott and Fillmore, the meme queen could not help herself. Starsky and
You know
Hutch.
what? Hutch just passed away.
Yeah, he just passed away, I think, this week. What a great car.
David Soul, I think he was 80 years old. Yeah, he just passed away. He's been living in London, I think it is, for a long, long time.
Phil, would you drive that car today?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it's a beautiful car.
Even though it's a Ford, I would drive it.
Scott Duffey, what's going on with your beloved Eagles? Did they win last week? I don't even know.
No,
they're out.
Everything that Phil said about Dallas, it's just that's what the fans are doing. It's what happened at the beginning of to totally do a flip really does confuse you. It was a big letdown. It's horrible to watch.
These are fighting words, Phil, from PSS in Philadelphia. Dallas sucks. Philly shat the bed. Dallas sucks. So would you like to respond, Phil? This is the longest show on record.
That's a traditional rivalry, the Eagles and the Cowboys, and so no, I respect their views as long as they respect mine. So there you go.
Space Coast will have the last word on this. He says it is Niners season. Scott Duffey, leave us with something happy. The decapitation really got to me. I feel like it was a downer. Leave us with something happy.
Well, how about I just
Oh, by the way, let me interrupt you real quick. Could you send me some snow photos of your neighborhood, and I will post them on Instagram at Surviving the Survivor, and I will look at them while I'm sitting by the pool. Would you do that this weekend? Send me some snow photos.
Yes, I would love to see the side by sides too. So
I did not mean to cut you off. So just share something happy. You want to show us your shirt one more time?
Yeah, let's do a nice. Is that good?
Sensitive Scott.
Well, can I close out with everybody?
Please. I hope someone does.
Is seeing reaping the good vibes from Scott's shirt there. We have talked. This is one of the shows that I think we got more macabre in this show than we ever have. I mean, it was some horrific things that we talked about that affected people's lives. And so we mentioned it, before, but I want people to remember that, and this will get them going because, I'm going to say what I'm going to say. So everyone is redeemable. And God is in control. And every one of us has a chance for that redemption through the sacrifice of Jesus Christ on that cross and his defeating death. And God loves all of us. And he wants that relationship with each one of us. So I'll leave it with that. And I hope and pray everybody has a great weekend and a joyful one.
I think that is going to become a new tradition. I think Phil will always close out the show. What else could I say to top that? Members only tonight, Patreon, YouTube, Dateline watch party. I'll be there. I'll be beyond exhausted. I'll be cuddling with Ethel. The COE will probably yell at our children. That will scare the crap out of Ethel. There's something about the COE's voice when she yells at the kids. She immediately takes cover in another room. But I'll be there. I'll be there. Members only, 119.24, 9 p.m. How much information is on this one full screen? Join Joel, STS Nation live. This is like as long as the magnum opus here. This is like Herman Melville's Moby Dick for full screens. That's it. Phil said it all. Quick reminder, Donna Adelson is in court. I'm going to do the Phil thing. Donna Adelson is in court Monday. We're going to be covering the hearing Monday. And then Monday night, we're doing a show on Donna. Tuesday, Louis Baptiste and Stephen Webster are back. And then I think we're going to get into this Chaconis trial on Wednesday. That was my Phil impression. Until then, love you, America. I have to go get medicine for my child. Love you everywhere around the world, especially the Republic of Ireland and Toronto, Canada.